All right. Nathaniel Gillis, what's going on, brother?
Hey man, it's good to be with you. It
It's good
always
to be
is,
with
and
you.
it's been a minute, man. How you been?
I know. I'm good, man. How are you? How you been? I see you've
Uh,
been busy.
Very busy, very busy. Getting burned out, and we're about ready to release Parasymposia here in a week or two. I'm excited about that. But other than that, man, it's good to be with you tonight. And there's a lot to get into. Some of it might be repetitive because I literally do shows every day now. So
Dude,
there's
you're
so
popping
much
up
to
all
talk
over my
about.
feed, but you're killing it. You're killing it.
Man.
And I think it's good that you're getting out there to so many people because people need to be need to have their minds expanded a little bit with especially with some of this stuff.
We have to. I think it's time for the field to move forward to what my friend Grant calls post paradigm research. We've had every other model presented to us, and I think now it's time to move forward.
No, I agree. I agree. And what I wanted to start with tonight, and I wonder how deep you've gotten into this book because I was just starting it after I saw you mention it on that podcast you sent me,
Yeah,
Disembodied Souls by
yeah.
Richard C. Steiner.
Oh, wow.
And I know that it'll be new because I don't know how much this is you've gotten into this yet with many people on yeah. It's I
Mm,
have I got the digital version as soon as I saw you mention it
unbelievable.
in that podcast yesterday, and
Hmm.
I was like, okay, we gotta get into some of this because this to me it seems to align with some of the stuff we were discussing last time that I know Steiner had brought up about the left hand path occultists and how they channel disembodied entities that
Yeah.
sort of form an egregore and they seem to get information from that. Now, what else is going on that this Steiner, which there's a synchronicity
Yeah,
there
different
with the
Steiner, by the
author.
way, folks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is he saying in regards to all this? Because I haven't been
Oh,
able
my
to get
goodness.
much into it, but I have a feeling I know where it might start to go at least.
Well, it's a compendium provided by separate religious scholars. They're all talking about various belief systems within antiquity regarding the soul, its disembodiment, the afterlife, and they go through various traditions in what are called root words or borrowed loan words in the Bible, to where you would have a word that seems to be in the King James Version. It seems to be of Hebrew origin. And then you realize, no, that entered into Hebrew consciousness because they were a nomadic, tribal, right, people that are just moving constantly on the move. Because they were moving constantly, they were inheriting various traditions that sometimes they would actually bleed them right into
Yeah.
their own theology. And in that particular book, which I suggest everybody buy it. It's fascinating. You really get deep into it. But what they start to discuss is the potential, at least, of the soul existing out of the body. And it's not tied to any dogma. It's not tied to any tradition, really. It's like, okay, here's what they believed, and here's evidence of it. And what you see is by virtue of just evolution and time, their theories would evolve. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't believe what that person believed anymore. I believe in this. And the two main focal points that they present are borrowed loan words, one of them being Rephaim, mentioned in the Old Testament. And they go back to Ugaritic ritual bowls and pull out the original borrowed loan word, which was Repeumai. And Repeumai was not some hybrid creature in terms of sons of God, right, met with the daughters of men, but they were trying to describe a state of consciousness that exists out of body. And so Repayumai, originally in the Ugaritic literature and ritual bowls, were designed to be liminal entities that had passed on and had evolved in their consciousness into a creature, in a way, mutated consciousness, living in between. And so in these ritual bowls, and this is crazy, before the Rephaim were mentioned in the Old Testament, they were in Ugaritic literature as semi-divine ancestors that were prayed to.
Okay. Okay.
Weird. Weird. And then, and again, I'm not saying I believe this. I'm just telling you what they're researching and the ideas that are floating around in academia. And they get into this idea of souls and what souls were in antiquity. And they get into some of T. Whitten Davies' research regarding idolatry and the idea that when you have an entity that is made by man's hands, that there was some kind of, and they won't use the word topomancy, but the idea was that, yes, before the thought formed, right, you have the form of thought. In other words, the person's actually molding this creature. He's forming the thought of the thought form.
Okay.
And so he's actually structuring the material image of an entity that's consciously describing itself to them, and they would create an idol. Now, here's the issue, right? The eyes, and some of the prophets, even David said this, you have eyes that can't see, ears that can't hear. Well, that's the idol. But when you get into Disembodied Souls, it talks about how that there were entities that actually possessed these idols, and that the word soul itself was interchangeable. So when you're looking, is this good, Chris? You already smiling.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
At the idol, when you're looking at the material image, you're looking at the externalized soul of the entity. So that's why when people say, okay, well, it's just an idol. No, it's not. Even in Greek mythology, your oracles, before they would go and present to the king, they would walk by the statue, and the entity within the statue would speak to them, because it's not just a statue. It's the manifestation, the materialization of a soul. And that's what they believed. Now, what's so fascinating about this is not only did Yahweh outlaw the worship of these beings, because he knew it wasn't just, statues, it was consciousness within them. But he also basically, and this is crazy, in Disembodied Souls, he implies that there is an evolution between those who conjure these entities and the entities that are conjured. There's a relationship. And so the more these beings were conjured, the more the conjurer took upon the characteristics of the entity they're conjuring. And David says those who worship them will become like them. Why? Because you too will need to possess a statue at one point. You will have to disembodiment. You will have to possess. We will have the disability of being without being a being. So you'll be disembodied and seek possession. And that's a lot of the theories that they're toying with. But that's really the foundation of their research.
Now, I wonder if some of the ideas about the original image being inserted into the mind, does that have to do with like the bicameral mind, and how some theorize that consciousness was developing, where like back in, say, the ancient Greek days, they would have a sort of different view of the world, and their right brain would be sort of making images of things that we wouldn't see today, because we have more of an integrated left and right brain. So, and the right brain's usually more related to like religion and belief systems and visual symbols, basically. So it's interesting because there's these studies where they would split the brain, I think, in people who had disorders where they would have seizures. And when they did that, atheists would be asked if they believed in God, and they would say no, but they would like circle yes. Yep. So like, I'm wondering if if similar to that, like there's the entity is coming through that right brain that they can't really,
absolutely, buddy, absolutely. And what's so fascinating about this, again, you guys gotta understand, Disembodied Souls is not presenting any theory. That's the key element here. It's just a bunch of scholarship that sits down with the texts and says, okay, they're pulling from various sources and saying, okay, this is what they believed according to what's called material culture or archaeology hard archaeology. My point, though, is when we're dealing with this subject matter, there are two versions of possession within the text. And this is key to my research necronetics, by the way. But in the 17th century, really the 16th century, there was a split in demonologies. In Safdi Israel, there was the Dibuk phenomenon occurring, the abduction, the sexual activity, incubi cases, impregnation, pregnancy, and possession in Safdi Israel. And so you have the more Kabbalistic Isaac Luria, Haim Vital, various scholars and practitioners of Kabbalah who are coming out and saying, okay, if in fact all of these are horns and hooves, we have a major problem in the data. Because they had cases where people were being possessed by entities that were solving their own murderers, Chris.
Yeah.
Literally, like one case I read, a man was stabbed to death, and he's like, well, you know, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where I'm at right now, but I got to tell you, like, here's the address of my murderer. Here's the name of my murderer, right? Here's where the knife is in his home. And so the authorities, again, they didn't believe this was louche or any kind of woo, especially not taboo in their culture. And so they go knocking on the man's door. The man comes stumbling out. He hasn't slept in a week. He's out of his mind and he's shaking. And he goes, I knew you guys were on your way. And they're like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you know, about a decade ago, I did a really bad thing. And this entity, this ghost has been haunting me. And I knew you were going to come here. And he confessed to it. And so their demonology was shaken. Right. And then meanwhile, in the Vatican, they're saying, well, all of these are horns and hooves. These are all right. They're all demons. They all lie. That is up until they agreed with, which is strange here, by the way, up until when they agreed with Catholicism. Only then did they tell the truth. Everything else is a lie. And so there were two kind of understanding concepts of possession within the phenomenology, and they did not agree with each other. Now, one of the more controversial texts that's mentioned in Disembodied Souls, and not just that, but a book called Jewish Views of the Afterlife. And again, I'm not tying myself to a particular dogma here. I'm just throwing this out there for people to entertain because it's fascinating stuff. And maybe I will tie it up together in a bow later on in the show. But there's this idea within scholarship, especially within rabbinic circles. In the book of Psalms, chapter 109 and 6, there's a passage that they cannot reconcile because David is basically hurling accusations and verbal assaults against an enemy of his. And he said, place a wicked man over top of him. Place a wicked man over him. And let an accuser, in the Hebrew, it's a Hasatan, it's a Satan, place an accuser at his right hand. Now, that word wicked is the Hebrew word rasha, and it has a dual meaning that rabbinic scholars wrestled with. The first meaning is possession.
Mm-hmm.
It's a possessing entity. It's a wicked, you see where I'm going, possessing entity. And they said, well, this doesn't make any sense because even in the Old Testament, when God instructed Israel to go in and possess a land, he used the same word, go in and rasha it. And so when they went back and they looked at this, they said, well, this seems to be an instance of possession that doesn't fit the mold. It's an evil spirit, but it is a man. In addition to that, now this will kind of turn possession on its face, just for conversation again, for the open minds here and people that are interested in scholarship. It turns it on its face because here in this case study, you have two entities present. You have the wicked man possessing, and then you have a Satan with the wicked man. And so their idea in the 17th century, one idea of possession was that you're dealing with an evil entity that has been cursed to wander in dry places seeking rest. What does it have? It has a disability of being. It's a being without being a being. What it seeks is form. And so what it does is it will possess a person. This is crazy. It's wild theory here that they're working with. In that what happens is because that individual's cursed, he's being haunted by a Satan. So you have two in one person. And if you go to Catholicism, see where I'm going, Chris? Which one's being exorcised?
Huh.
Because and this is, I'm just toying with theories here in this book, because it's possible we can get rid of the Satan in the evil spirit still present.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's the theory they were toying with, which is, it's really interesting to me.
So what do they do in that case? If that
hope and pray,
it's basically,
right?
Basically, these are probably like the possession cases that never get resolved, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
And
which,
go ahead.
Which this opens up a can of worms here, because if that is what possession is, and possession to us is pregnancy to them, then what are we really dealing with in the debug phenomenon when they had possessions and pregnancies in the same case studies, right? In their demonology, 16th century Softy Israel, the same women who were possessed by entities they had intercourse with were impregnated by them. So the church comes over and says, okay, not even the church, the rabbis and Softy said, okay, it looks like you're not just pregnant by the entity, you're pregnant with it. So what if we're looking at this now, who are you pregnant with? If that's really what possession is, oh my God, are you pregnant with the Hasatan, the Satan? Or are you pregnant with a disembodied soul that fallen angels connected to? What's going on here? And that's why Disembodied Souls has such a profound, it's really an interesting work. And again, at the end, they don't really come to a theological conclusion in terms of, okay, this is doctrine. It would just simply be that's what they believed at that particular time. Here's the scholarship, you decide. But it's really interesting.
So, and now, because I remember you saying if you wanna understand what's going on in certain aspects of the darker layers of this, whatever we want to call our government, the puppet show we want to call our government, whatever's behind that, the people with the actual power are seeking, I think you said, to be able to do this if they can't already do this themselves through things like remote viewing, which is one of the first things I think me and you ever spoke about when we discussed the Monroe Institute and their Adventurer series, where it was clear that what was going on, and I had never been aware of this when I was reading the books by Monroe. I don't think he mentioned that entities were coming in, but I'm not sure. I only read parts of the first one and parts of the third one, but I don't remember him mentioning like entities coming in through the bodies of the individuals who were remote viewing and speaking for them, like through their vocal cords, similar to what they're showing on the Disclosure Day trailer. So
that's mind blowing too, man. Yeah. Well, there has been an orchestrated effort on the part of our government to kind of whitewash, sugarcoat a lot of these practices. One of them, and there's two. We're gonna get into this real quick, and then we're gonna go to the dual nature of the soul, at least in theory, and what it can potentially look like outside of the body. But in the Gateway Process in 1983, the United States Army Intelligence Report released a paper on the ways that they were basically doing remote viewing and astral projecting. And I'm going to read this. This is so fascinating. But they were using what's called the hemi-sync. It's binaural beats to synchronize brain hemispheres, which you talked about this. Shifting from beta waves, normal waking brain activity, to theta or delta for deep relaxation. And here we go. Expanded states. Consciousness. Now, they go through various standards of focus. The focus 10, mind awake, body asleep. This is ideal for healing or problem solving. Focus 12, expanded awareness, potential for remote viewing or patterning or manifesting intentions. Key data point, everybody. Manifesting intentions. It's not just that they're trying to think about something. It's not just something, okay, that the manifestation is coming to them. No, that they're going to shift and change information into matter, into materialization.
And to that point, I actually heard an example of this, an antidote of this, where someone was saying them and their girlfriend had learned at the Monroe Institute how to astral project together into I guess, whatever one of these realms that one of these sections, or what does he call them? The areas in the.
I don't know.
You had just mentioned it. It's like area. What he calls them area. Focus, yeah, one of these focus areas, and they were able to create something there in the astral that then would manifest in reality when they were back awake in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and there's time manipulation and encounter with higher intelligence, all that stuff. Well, here's the thing, and this is what's fascinating about this to me, is that during these practices, the idea was to lower your brain activity into theta brainwave activity, which is a problem for me because, and we've seen this over and over again in the CE5 movement. It's Dr. Barry Fitzgerald, my buddy Steve Mera, where they're out there with the CE5 practitioner. And knowing that we've had cases, and I've had these cases, where people are performing the rite, if you will, and going out there and the protocols are successfully fulfilled, the phenomenon will hijack that entire event and do exactly what this talks about, where there's a time differential. And next thing you know, that person's being completely manipulated by the phenomenon. And at one point, Barry and Steve took an individual, put a brainwave monitoring unit on their head and said, okay, go through the process. And when they went through the process, the phenomenon manifested above their head within 25 seconds. This occurred. They went directly into theta brainwave activity. And what that is, again, we've seen this in so many of the cases in the folklore and the literature, where you're at the mercy of the phenomenon. You're a fish out of water. What am I going to do? I have no idea. And that phenomenon, again, because it's not just, again, hijacking consciousness in that moment, but I've had cases. I have one individual that reached out to me, and she said that after she successfully fulfilled that ritual, right, C5, that her and her husband had a profound spiritual event, and then it mutated into the most problematic and traumatic experience of her life. And she started having a symbol in her right eye on the bottom of her vision. And it would not go away. So she had it for weeks, Chris. So at one point, she goes to the eye doctor and says, okay, I need you to look at my eye because I can't go to sleep without seeing the symbol. It's everywhere I look. And so he's looking at her eye, right? He's doing these experiments with her and saying, okay, we're going to do this. And it turns out that it was not actually on her eye. It was a supernatural manifestation on the part of the phenomenon.
No, was it
completely hijacked the entire scenario?
Was it a sigil? This was a sigil?
I don't know if it was a sigil. It looks like it's just a strange symbol.
It's just so basically it could be a sigil. We just don't know.
Right. It could be tied. Again, a lot of these sigils are practitioner specific, to where it really is up to the intention of the phenomenon of that individual. But when you're dealing with this, again, the materialization of will, this is a profound occult tradition here. Yeah, the very first time I've heard of this was, 30 years ago now. I knew of a guy that was accused of being one of these individuals, and I don't believe he was, by the way, but he had the ability. He was a pastor, but he had the ability to do stuff. It's really wild, man, really wild. And he had this person that, and I don't even want to share this, but they came to him and said, my wife doesn't believe in God at all, doesn't believe in any of this stuff, and I don't know what to do to convince her. And the pastor looks at him and goes, okay, tell your wife to be prepared. You will receive a visitor tonight, and do not be afraid. And so what happened was they went to bed that night, and the wife gets up to get a glass of water, and there's a person standing at the foot of her bed just watching her. So what we're looking at is the materialization of intention and will. Right? Not just, okay.
Is he remote viewing? Or is he remote viewing her? Is he astral projecting himself into a room? Is this what he's doing? And this gets back to what you were saying, is what do the people who are projecting themselves to view certain things for like our government, who's seeing like Joe Monagle when he's like, what do they see? What do they see him as?
Oh my gosh. So that's a huge, massive connection here. And this is going to be a lot of new stuff for people that follow me. And I know this isn't like my main category of research, but you guys got to understand, when I just love talking about fascinating subjects.
And there's 100 other videos of Nathaniel talking about the other stuff. So let's do some new stuff.
So dealing with this idea of projection and astrally projecting and remote viewing, there is some work, and I'm not saying this is what I believe, but there's some work being done right now in the Hasidic community in Brooklyn, where a lot of the rabbis are believing that what we call remote viewing today is what the ancient prophets did. Now, I don't believe that at all. I believe we're dealing with two sources. I do. Yeah. Two sources here. But getting back to the transferring of information, the transforming of information into matter, we're going to have to realize that that is occurring. Okay. Now I've already given you, it's called the gateway process. There's a paper that's involved, and let me see here. It's called the analysis and assessment of the gateway process. It was declassified in '83, and basically talking about the holographic person, the holograph of us, holographic soul. Now, my point here is was also declassified by our federal government in 2002. Now, you guys are familiar with this particular paper. 2002, federal government declassified a USSR experiment that was performed in 1972. And in this particular experiment, they took a practitioner of the occult and they placed them in a controlled laboratory, in a controlled environment. And they took a blank piece of photograph paper, placed it inside an envelope, taped it to the forehead, said, okay, from left to right, we want you to project. What are they talking about? We're going to test whether or not you can change information into matter by virtue of intention, right?
And this stuff fascinates me, man. This stuff fascinates
me. Oh, this is
me.
incredible. Yeah. This is incredible here. And during this process, they went through various experiments that took months, but the end result of it was that they were successful. And they began to take the piece of paper out of the envelope from left to right. The individual heard the symbol. Okay, it was in their ear. This is what I want you to get from left to right. The first symbol, right, is a star. And then we go, okay, cool. Focus your intent. Focus your intent. And it would happen. They had them projected from information, from consciousness into information, from information into intention. And that materialized into symbols on the piece of paper. Now, here's the key data point. They decided to separate, put distance in between the practitioner and that piece of paper. And they said, okay, do the same thing. Oh my gosh. And in this particular experiment, they're watching this, and out of nowhere, there manifests in between the envelope and the practitioner a biofield. A biofield filled with corpuscular balls of light, or orbs. Okay? And it's moving from the body of the practitioner over on top of the envelope, descends down upon the envelope. They pull the piece of paper out, and they had successfully, from a distance, action, right? From a distance, they had successfully did the same thing. Now it was, yes, even though there's 20 feet between you, that biofield carried the intention, the information needed to materialize the symbols in the paper. Now we're going to get into what's built into that biofield. Okay? Right. Not just the symbols, This is a book called Demons and Spirits of the Land, Ancestral Lord Practices. Okay. We're going to talk about how that built into the biofield that's being projected by the occultist, by the practitioner, there is an alter ego, a separate image of the practitioner that is designed to protect form, designed to actually hide function. Okay? Now, this is a local land spirits. In the book of this is going to be quite, I'm going to kind of dumb it down and kind of simplify it, shorten it. But he's dealing with the book of settlements and talking about a king. His name is King Eric. Now watch this. When King Eric, the spell was successful, King Eric and his wife were soon forced to leave the country. This is what this magician is doing. He's working for an individual named King Harold Gormson of Denmark. Here we go. When King Harold Gormson of Denmark decided to take possession of Iceland, he consulted a magician who possessed the power to send a double of himself, an alter ego, so that he could obtain information without actually being there. What is he doing?
He's remote viewing.
He's remote viewing. He's projecting, here we go, guys, an alter ego. And that alter ego is built into the biofield that's manifesting. This is going to blow your mind. And when Joe McMoneagle manifested in that cell, it did not look like Joe McMoneagle. It looked, according to the witness, an angel hovering 3 feet off the ground and illuminated. Here's what's fascinating. Built into the biofield, it's not just the information, it's the intention, and it's who I want to appear to be in that moment. It's an extension. Now, let's get down to this. I had a case study come to me, it's been about a year and a half ago, one of Dr. Carla Turner's old cases. An individual said, look, you're not going to believe this. He's like, but you're the only researcher talking about this, so I'm just going to kind of level with you and give you exactly what I know and what my family experienced. I said, okay. Form and not function. Form and not function. He said, my mother was laying down on the couch in the living room. My father and I are watching television. From the corner of my eye, I see a biofield. It's got corpuscular balls of light. It's translucent. It's slowly moving into the living room. It descends down upon my mother. 30 minutes later, she wakes up saying, I was abducted by an alien. There's the alter ego. What happened to her was that she was covered from head to toe in sigils. That's the real information. That's the function. And so my point here is that there is built in these biofields, just a theory of mine, is that what we are so convinced of is form and not function now, that it appears that we have entities that can actually project themselves, and they're actually hidden in the mask itself. To where, is that really an alien? Maybe not. It seems to be a projection of consciousness, and that's why itself is sigilizing people. Just a theory, and I'm just rambling at this point.
Now, would it be a, oh man, because I'm assuming, I guess the assumption is we all have a biofield, or an aura, which is the more new age term for a biofield. So I guess we would all have this. Do we all have multiple sort of archetypal entities that would be in this biofield regardless? Or is this something that's...
I don't know about that. I think that what these people are doing is they're projecting an alter ego of themselves as a mask to mask the actual ritual they're performing on individuals.
Okay.
Right? To where I'll look like whatever. Again, this gets back into the co-creation of the archetype.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, well, okay, are you my dear Aunt Edna? No, I'm just using that as a projection.
Yeah. So you have these occult practitioners who are using archetypes and projecting them and creating them, or even probably being conjured themselves into creating
Mhm.
these archetypes that they then use on other individuals.
Yes. Now so that's one theory, is that I can put within the information, within my intention, I want
Hmm.
to intend to look like this. I intend to look like this to you.
Yeah.
But beyond the form, there's the function. And the function's really what we're looking for, not the form. This is why it never made sense. Well, why would an alien sigilize a body? Because it's not the function of the alien. The alien, at least in this case study, right, was just an avatar. It was the alter ego that these individuals could create so that we'll go around telling people, yeah, it was just. No, 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 no. Meanwhile, no, those are Theban. It was Theban iconography on the body. Hello, right? And I'm not saying that to you, I'm saying it to the larger field. So my point, though, is that that's what could potentially be happening. Um, I'm probably getting crucified in the comments because I know this is this really, really weird stuff here.
No, you're
Um,
good. Actually, everyone here is really weird. So most of my buddies who are here, they've been they're down. They're down. So you're good.
Thank you. But I think that's what we're dealing with in some of these case studies. But my point is that when you're getting into divination and some of the demonological literature, there was the question of, okay, is that the externalization of your soul? Is that really you, Joe McMonagle? Essentially, was that you manifesting in that jail cell? And this kind of it gets extrapolated to a larger dilemma, because if it is you, why didn't it look like you? It didn't. It had characteristics that were not human. I mean, of course, it was humanoid, but Joe McMonagle doesn't usually float off the ground and shine from
Yeah.
translucent body and all that. And so that's why in some early demonological books they would talk about, okay, yeah, that's you're convinced it's you, just like this book I read to you earlier, right? That sorcerer would be convinced it was them. But in theory, it may not have been them at all. It could have been an entity that convinced you, to where now you're conjuring, not realizing it, you're conjuring an entity to be manifested in that environment. And that entity is coming back and saying, good job, dude. It was all you, buddy. And it's
Yeah.
not, it's a separate entity. That's one theory.
And that's what I started to feel like was going on in the Explorer series. I think Mr. Rioso said it was at the Monroe Institute, because they were getting information when they were supposed to be remote viewing things. They were getting information and astral project. So they were doing both remote viewing and astral projecting, but they were getting information that they said they were going to get, but they were getting it from entities.
Yeah, entities.
So even if they were supposed to be seeing something, they were actually the majority of the time being told what they were seeing by another entity.
Yes, and given the interpretation of it. And that's, even the Collins elite. Now, again, I don't subscribe to some of their theories, but I look at their research and some of their cases, and they came across people in our federal government who were remote viewing these entities, and which was a stupid thing to do, in my opinion. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like worse than remote viewing a serial killer, because it's like you don't know what their limitations are. And so they were remote viewing these entities, and next thing they know, like one of them's like eating dinner with his family, and he just feels like he's being watched. How was work today, babe? Really good. I'm gonna go to the study. Why?
Mm-hmm.
I just got to go away. Something's wrong. And that's when they were being remote viewed by these beings. And in all, like, everything went wrong in their lives. And that's when people within the Collins elite said, guys, like, you're trying to weaponize this to the point that you just unlocking doors that you can't shut.
Yeah.
You're opening them constantly, and you don't know how to close them. And then people will end up missing, and really bad things happen.
And That's part of the reason I stopped looking into, because I was very interested in remote viewing for a while.
Mhm.
And I would watch a few of the groups that are even on YouTube now that do the remote viewing. I forget the name of. I think one's just like one's like future
Yeah.
forecasters. One's just I think it's just this like remote viewing group. Like they're very
Mhm.
basic names. There's even a Hellfire Club that one of the guys is involved in. But they within their predictions, I would notice that sometimes they're also being told these predictions. And also, I was like, well, from what I know about the Monroe Institute now,
Mhm.
what if someone's just feeding them information that's
Mhm.
purposefully deceitful? Then the predictions they're giving, not only now are they more likely to manifest if they're negative, because you're projecting that over a channel to hundreds of thousands of people potentially who then get that
Mhm.
inside their subconscious mind, and that event is more likely to take place. But you're also getting information that could just be totally untrue and an attempt to control
Mhm.
perception. So I was like, I don't want to mess
Yeah.
with that if they don't even know if the information is coming from another source that isn't
They don't even
themselves.
right. We are at such a disadvantage as a species that, I mean, we can be manipulated by many of these creatures, and,
And not even
I
them. What about the government at this point with the
well,
technology
you're
they
right.
have?
You're right. The government, yes, of course,
And
and
I mean, military industrial complex, I should say. Like they're trying to put advertisements in our sleep. We obviously know they have a technology that like voice to skull type technology. So, what if
Mhm.
their remote viewing messages and predictions given to them by the NSA or some random uh,
Yeah.
intelligence agency?
I think it goes hand in hand, and it's gonna get to a point where we'll be unable to distinguish between our technology and these entities, and that's gonna be even scarier. And then it's like, well, what do we do at that point, right? Do we just go away in a shack in the woods, just cut off everything? Because we don't know, it's a struggle. I really do believe, and I was on a show earlier today, and they asked me about that. I think it's the struggle for the soul of humanity,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
What is that? I'm not sure yet, right? We have many definitions and theories, but whatever it is, it's not good, and it's just a constant desensitization, right? Just we're desensitized to human suffering and just it's really bad. And I don't want to ramble there, but so whatever we're dealing with though, again, is that the remote viewer? Is that an entity convincing him that you have externalized your soul? Now,
Exactly.
the problem is, and this gets into something that one of Dr. Carla Turner's experiencers was told in an abduction, that your avatars and that the species of the soul is different than the body it inhabits. Now, this kind of plays into, again, Disembodied Souls of the book, where they're getting into what some Christians believe in the New Testament in regarding angels and angelology, where you have an individual, it was John the Baptist, I believe it was, who is believed to have been martyred, and he is now knocking on the door of his family. I believe it was John. It might have been Matthew, but my point is, they're knocking on the door, and the families look at the peephole, and they see the form of this person. And in the Bible, it says they believed it to be his angel. They also believed he had just died. So there's something wrong, and then that's where in Disembodied Souls it kind of articulates that theory that, yeah, that they believed, again, dealing with the Ugaritic version of Malakuma, which was, again, disembodied consciousness. That was changed in Hebrew theology to Malakum, which is angel. That's, again, not my theory. I'm just toying with some of the scholarship here, but it's fascinating nonetheless. But the soul being a different species in the body it inhabits, and I'm telling you guys, it kind of sounds like Bob Lazar.
Yeah. And also sounds like it does sound like it could be a very convenient excuse for transhumanists
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
posthumanists who think that they could just take your consciousness and upload it to a new avatar or
Mhm.
avatar.
Well, it also sounds a lot like, okay, within abduction phenomena, we have this kind of polemic. We have this point where people toss around, they're like, yes, and then this person was taken and things were done to their body, and then the body itself, they're told that you will not remember this, and then
Mm-hmm.
they were taken out of their body. Well, it's kind of like there are TV shows and even movies where this happens, but it only happens in the context of the body being an avatar, where what's being done to the body is not really for the body, it's being done for the soul. But
Yeah.
the avatar doesn't know that. The avatar is being abducted, right? And so things happen to it, but not for it. And now what ends up happening, we've had cases like this where people are being taken out of their body, things are being done to their soul, and then they're put back into their body, and the body begins to demonstrate skin anomalies that they remember being done to the soul. Now it's manifesting subdermally to the surface
Mm-hmm.
of the avatar. It's so there's this kind of sulfur skin second relationship that was first articulated in Ezekiel chapter 13, going back to disembodied souls, where Yahweh is warring against this species of necromancers. And he talks about, again, he's like, those who hunt the souls of men to make them fly. He's talking about the Ba'a soul. And then there's many texts that talk about that, where you go to sleep at night and the soul leaves and stuff, all that weird,
Mm-hmm.
just really it's theories. But he's referring back to this practice of necromancy, necromancers who would perform a ritual to abduct the soul of a person, hold it captive for ransom. And in that particular passage, as Ezekiel chapter 13, there are many references to this. One reference is that they're doing this for wheat and barley, and one scholar says, well, they were called piss prophets, forgive the term, but it was designed to determine pregnancy. And they were doing this for wheat and barley. Why? Because they wanted to become pregnant. They were trying to replicate, and that's necronetics, a whole nother show. But in addition to this passage, he's referring to this idea that those who should live die. Why? Because their soul's being taken. And those who should die live. Why? Because their bodies are being harvested. And there's this relationship here that people miss because they don't read this book here, the book I'm referring to. But he's talking about the species of necromancers that when they go into homes at night, they will take pieces of their bodies and skin punches and skin anomalies. They'll take a piece of their flesh and sew it onto a body that they're trying to create for themselves. Now, in the King James Version, it says that these are blankets or pillowcases. But in the Hebrew language, it says it's skin.
Man, this
Now,
gets
what?
into there's so many synchronicities here with things that
Right.
I've been talking about with some of my buddies and the weird, almost cultural obsession lately with serial killers that actually get into the
There we
mutilation and
go.
wearing of
There we go.
skin, like wearing of different faces.
Right. Yes, it's the social skin in demonic possession. It's the disability of being without being a being. Why? Because I had an image in idolatry. I don't want an image, I want a body. How can I have a body? Through hybridism, possession and pregnancy, right? And so within this passage, you have the King James Version that says what they were doing is they were going into homes at nighttime, separating the soul from the body. And in the middle of that stupor, they're taking pieces of the body. Now, in the King James Version, it says pillowcases and cloth. It's the same Hebrew word for skin. They're taking skin from the victims, going over and sewing a new social skin for themselves to inhabit. That's 4,000, 5,000 years ago.
Also sounds like cloning.
Cloning, self-replication of species, necronetics, necromancy, and genetics. So it's early hybridism. Now, weird stuff we're dealing with right now. And people are going to probably crucify me, and maybe I deserve it. But
You'll be good. You'll be good.
What they're dealing with, again, is they're doing their best to articulate a phenomenon. A species of practitioners that have rituals that can loosen the soul and capture it. Now, what's fascinating is during this particular time, they were having an outbreak of what's called leprosy. Oh my God. And these individuals were presenting themselves to the priest. And the priest would ask them, have you had contact with what's called Lashon Hara in the Hebrew tongue? Okay. Why? Because Lashon Hara encapsulates two thematic elements. Number one, it's false prophecy. Have you been in contact with a species of false prophets? Why? Because most people who were in contact with them come back with a skin condition. Why? Because you're being used to create a body. I'm just throwing this out there, guys. And you know what? Whatever. It's roll with it. And so what happened was we look back retroactively and say, okay, well, 21st century, yeah, our leprosy is their leprosy. No, it wasn't. Their leprosy was not Hansen's disease. Their leprosy, remember what I said, soul first, skin second? They believed that there was a spiritual condition first, skin condition second. Why? Because you were pulled out spirit, and they be really crazy stuff. My point, though, is
and it's almost like the body is degrading because it can't hold. Yeah.
The body is being performed upon by a necromancer, a species of necromancers. And at that point in time, they said, okay, not only are they false prophets, not only will they give you fake prophecies, right? Where, God's going to return at this point, or this is going to happen tomorrow, all that. They would never work out because they didn't know. They were just, they're species of necromancers. My point, though, and this is what I'm trying to articulate if I can here, with my ADHD, is that what they were trying to do their best, they were pointing at something out there in the darkness and saying that, yeah, there's a soul and skin relationship. People are being plucked out of their bodies without their permission, awareness at times. And at the end result of it is that there's a skin condition that accompanies this soul abduction encounter. And this gets, anyways, and I'll shut up there. But it's really fascinating stuff that they talk about.
Well, I don't know if you were gonna say that this gets into something that's modern, because it starts reminding me of things like Morgellons, thing that is unexplained. Apparently, it doesn't even exist half the time, depending on what the mainstream medical complex wants to tell us is real or not real, and just various unexplained skin conditions like this that are manifest today, in people who seem to have some sort of also spiritual malady because of it, or not because of it. I'm guessing maybe they're having the skin thing now because of the spiritual malady. They just don't know it.
Okay, so we have cases of soul abductions that ended up with skin anomalies. That's what fascinates me. Betty Luke is one of them. And people in the field now are trying to understand, okay, why is that taking place? Now, and this gets into some really hairy stuff here, unfortunately. But Ian Stevenson's had case studies of near-death experiences. Oh my God, help us. Where the person goes through a near-death experience and there's a transition of the individual, where something else enters that body. The names change, the language preference has changed.
These walk-ins, basically.
It's Montgomery's walk-in, and it happened at near death when the soul leaves the body. Boom. And I'm talking about one particular case that he had, and I don't know if I can find it in my notes here because I have a lot of stuff in front of me. Probably not. But individual is a female, and like basically her whole ethnicity changed.
Yeah. I remember you talking. I remember you talking about this once.
It was a show recently, yeah, where like she ended up just not even talking to her parents anymore, actually moved in with the family and knew exactly who she was. Yeah. Hey guys, back. What's going on? Yeah. So this whole idea in Ezekiel 13 was those who should die are living. Why? Because you were destined to die. And how are they existing? Because you're killing people who should live. You're capturing souls. Now, let's get back to another Dr. Carla Turner case study, where an individual who was had a near-death experience, I believe it was, but she's taken and she's on a board of this craft, and one of the entities look at her, and they're trying to get her to do something, and she's pushing back, and it's like, I'm not going to do this. I refuse to do it. You're not going to boss me around. I'm not capitulating. Well, finally, they said, okay, well, here's the problem. If you do not do what we want you to do, we're going to take you. And you see that body, and they pointed, and there was another copy of her body on a table. And they said, "We'll send that back as you,
and no one will know.
And no one will notice." The problem is, the idea was that, yeah, that will be my avatar, but it's not me within it. And I believe everyone that's watching this, okay, I think that we've got hybridism messed up because it's been dominated by ufology, which has been secularized, and it's kind of not really rooted in the esoteric origin it originated from. And if that's the case, then hybridism itself may be possession and pregnancy. It might not be, okay, I'm altering DNA. Well, it could, but it's the actual idea of building an avatar, right? I'm taking pieces of I'm creating a new body for myself so that I can inhabit it. Anyways,
no, that's dude, don't stop there, because that's where I wanted to get to. Because so the question is, now, is this what these elite black nobility family bloodlines that have been around forever have done, are seeking to do? Or is it now some combination of, instead of cloning themselves, it's more like an altered carbon situation where they want just any sort of body or capsuled vessel that they can inhabit? And we're seeing this also in Disclosure Day, because I don't know if everyone remembers the trailer. They're biohacking. Someone's biohacking someone else's consciousness right in the trailer. The guy with his yeah, the guy with the thing, and then you see him clap, and he takes over the girl's consciousness. I don't know if that's a clone or if that's a avatar, if that's an actual person, but they're showing it to you right there in the trailer for a movie about aliens.
Yeah. It bugs me that, I mean, let's just assume that that is a form of disclosure. It's like, well, why would I have to have a movie ticket to get disclosure? And if I did have that, like, would I believe it? Or has it been another doctored, curated narrative on the part of the government to separate us from the source? If they really want to put disclosure out there, go to the Philip experiment. Go to parapsychology. Why don't you just go out there and tell people, yeah, we encountered them first in seances, homemade Ouija boards like George Hunt Williamson.
And so even Tracy Twyman. Same thing.
Absolutely. Tracy Twyman. Why don't we really get back to the phenomenology of this thing instead of curating a narrative that is institutionalized non-disclosure? So in the middle of this whole movement here, we've got people that are like, well, we didn't really go too deep into the age of disclosure. Well, why didn't you? Well, because we didn't want to scare people. There's a lot. That's not disclosure. It's a narrative.
Yeah.
Right?
And if I were people, I wouldn't expect any sort of thing, a disclosure from the puppet government that puts on a show for everyone to believe that there's still some sort of separate system that isn't run by a globalized elite. That it already is.
Yeah.
And who's behind them is probably these entities that we're talking about here. So yeah, I don't know why people are looking at this for full-blown disclosure about things like that. You're going to have to figure it out for yourselves.
You will, and it'll require a lot of late nights, lonely hours of reading, and just being alienated. Not by aliens, by the way. Alienated from your fellow man, because you're going to get into stuff that's just like, I don't even want to know this, but this is a piece to the puzzle. But yeah, that's where I'm at in terms of the meta research I'm involved in. I'm entertaining everything here, right? I'm looking at everything, trying to to synthesize something that's meaningful. But in doing so, yeah, that book Disembodied Souls was absolute lightning. I didn't know what to do with that, man. I'm going, oh no, like that was possible? Like they believed that was possible. And in some ways it kind of recontextualized my own experiences in life, but that's
Because
that.
so potentially this has been going on, and it might not be new for a lot of people I know here, but it's probably been going on for a long time.
Mhm.
This sort of occulted hybridization of
Oh my.
a
Oh,
program
oh,
that's actually being run by occultists,
you
as
know,
opposed to, we don't know, there
yeah,
might be another faction, but occultists are definitely doing this as well.
I'm going to give you a term that's mentioned in Disembodied Souls, and it was a reference to what they were doing in Ezekiel 13. You ready for this? It's going to blow your
Yeah.
mind.
Let me write it down too, so I have
An
it.
ancient form of skin grafting.
Okay.
Now we're getting into vampirism, Nosferatu. Now we're getting
Yes.
in, right? The living dead.
Yes.
And that's what they were trying to point to. Like, hey, I don't know what this is, right? But according to my worldview, according to what I'm experiencing and witnessing, case studies, here's my best explanation, right? That
Yeah.
they're looking for a body and they're piecing together this body, and they're trying to keep it alive because it's their habitat. It's their biological avatar. And then if you realize, like, then you get into possession and pregnancy. Well, it's a lot easier to just impregnate someone with the fetus and take that as your own avatar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way easier. But yeah, it was skin grafting.
Well, so then that
What
makes
is
me start
that?
thinking of something that I actually just did a show on with my buddy Ronan on his show. The whole mutilations that happen with apparently people down in South America and Brazil and in, I think, Venezuela and Peru. Like, is that part of the same thing? I know
Very
you've
well
spoken
could
on
be.
this a little bit, because I think there was a practitioner in Peru, right? That was in the jungle of
Yep.
Peru. Yeah.
Jose Oliveira, absolutely. And that's going to be coming out because Ronnie Vernay is a Brazilian researcher. He's coming out with a documentary regarding that case study. And I believe that Steve Marinire will be interviewing him on the NHI discussions.
Or was that
That's going to
Brazil
be
or Peru, that one?
I'm talking about Brazil. You're
Brazil.
talking
That
about
was Brazil,
Peru.
bro. Yeah. And
Okay.
Peru
Yeah.
had the Pelicaris, the face peeler incident.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that,
I've seen some photographs too. It's wild.
yeah. And the story, with the one story, it almost didn't make sense. We were looking at it. The guy, the fisherman they found in the lake,
Mhm,
was 53 years old, alcoholic, had
mhm.
his surgically cut lower jaw and
Yeah.
pretty much his internal organs sucked out of symmetrical 1/8 of an inch holes by his lymph nodes, and there might have
Mhm.
been another 2 cuts down by his stomach. So it's like, what the hell are they
Oh
taking at
man.
that point? And they took an ear. So it's almost like, are they taking
Oh,
a
I saw.
souvenir at that point too?
What's going on here? And this gets back into serial killer pathology and like some of these individuals, again, like some of them have really low IQs, others have extremely high IQs, and then there's just the person in the middle that just seems to be really, they hallucinate, they disassociate,
Yeah.
and they start performing rituals where it's like, where did you even get that?
Yeah.
Right? Like the Zodiac killer. He's like, well, I'm doing this so I can have slaves in the afterlife. Well, who gave you that idea?
My guess is intelligence agencies or occult groups.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
strange stuff here. I mean,
Yeah.
and people ask me, like, okay, if you were to sit across the table from one of these entities, what would it be like? It would be like sitting across from Ed Kemper,
Hmm.
who, like, you realize, like, yeah, we're a completely different species here. Like, I can't relate to you, you can't relate to me, because there's a darkness there where it's just not a lack of morality. It's like, no, it's just a completely different. It's really strange.
And then when you look at these ideas of Scientology and you connect Parsons and Crowley and Ron Hubbard, and you see
Mhm.
what they were sort of doing, and especially with Scientology and their ideas about entities and how you can insert or take them out of someone, almost like alters,
Mhm.
which is the
Mhm.
same thing they spoke about in MK Ultra. Is that what happen with some of these? I mean, it seems to be that a lot of these serial killers were at some point in a prison where they were experimented on by
Yeah.
an intelligence agency, and before they went out and then did what they did.
Yeah,
So
and
what were
there's
they? What possessed them while they were in these agencies' care, basically?
well, it's perfected possession, right? It's
Yes.
where again I have to create a suitable body to wear a suitable social skin. But I believe again that all of that encompasses hybridism, and it's not until you actually dive into that literature, that form of literature, and these case studies that you start to piece together, like, oh my goodness, these were ancient skin grafters that were performing necromancy to rehabilitate their disability of being. And by the way, they were a species, not just that, but of false prophets. Blows my mind. It's like, it turns out to be less of just some kind of biblical text. It's like something right out of a science fiction novel, like a Stephen King movie or something, man.
I just realized that you just made a huge connection for me with something I've been looking into for a while, but haven't been able to put an end to or come to a conclusion with. But hide tanners,
Mhm.
because the Tanner family is a family that goes back a long time, and these hide tanners who also, this is where like when they had the whole after 9/11,
Mhm.
what was going around, anthrax, that usually comes, the only people who get anthrax usually are hide tanners apparently.
Mhm.
So it was a big conversation on one of the news channels back around that time. And if you look at shows like Dark or even Blade Runner, they talk about
Mhm.
the Tannhauser Gate,
Mhm.
or Mr. Tannhaus, who's a time traveler. So you get this House of Tanner. It keeps repeatedly coming up, and you're like, oh, the hide tanners, they literally skin animals and
Mhm.
dye them, and they would know things about alchemy because of this. They would know a lot because of their profession. And I'm wondering if that's part of where some of these practitioners come from.
Oh, I think it's all connected somehow. I think it's all connected. And speaking of connection, we need to be reconnected to the source of all this, and not just throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, a lot of people are like, okay, the Collins elite were a bunch of idiots. They were simpletons. And I'm thinking, no, they were physicists. Now, this is also interesting. And they weren't projecting their worldviews upon the phenomena. You know, let me go through this, okay, if I may.
Of course, man.
There's a theme going on in the field now from people who just don't know how to read. I don't know. That's me being a chump, and forgive me. I'm not trying to be like that,
No,
but
no,
it
I
is
agree. I agree.
annoying. It is annoying because the idea is that if someone says that religion plays a role in this, that well, you're projecting your worldview upon the phenomenon. And when I hear that, I instantly kind of go, okay, you need to go back to the phenomenology and realize that the earliest contactees were starting out with Ouija boards, but were contacting beings that claim to be Jesus, claim to be the Archangel Michael all the time. You know, and Jacques Vallée even mentioned this recently in a podcast, and I've spoken about it myself in many cases, where in Portugal, in Fatima, the Fatima apparitions, that there was called it was the miracle of the sun, but also simultaneously there's an apparition of the Virgin Mary. When you actually go down to the case studies and look at the testimonials, it wasn't the sun, it was like the spinning disc in the cloud.
Yeah, yeah. And
That
this
was
is
a
actually another thing I had recently done a show on, because I think it was in Garabaldar, I want to say, in Spain. I don't want to say the wrong. Yeah, no. Yeah, Garabandal, I think. So there was an apparition of Mary and the Archangel Michael, apparently, but it didn't look like Mary. It was a lady in white. It was a white lady. It was one of these Bledsoe white ladies. And the
oh my
kids were
gosh,
walking in reverse, and they were looking up, running in
yeah,
reverse, looking up, praying, running in reverse like The Exorcist. It was bizarre. And they were giving it
a
gifts and
religious
offerings.
motif,
Yeah.
a religious motif. Now, again, and I've been stressing this over and over again ad nauseum, where people that actually know the folklore, know the cases, do not believe and have not believed this is the Virgin Mary. Jim Simivan was on a podcast recently, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm very good friends with the Bledsoes," and and he basically says the same thing I said. Like, I believe them. I 100% believe they experience these things. I just don't believe it's the Virgin Mary. And then Simivan gets down into the depths here, and I sent to my buddy Steve. I'm like, Steve, oh my God, man, do you understand what he's pointing at? He's hinting at something much larger. And he gets into the fact that this lady in white, number one, was lying to them in many cases, terrifying the children in the home.
Yep.
When has that been talked about? And that there was some, and this is his term, not mine, there was something homoerotic about this entity. And I'm thinking, what's that all about?
And this is Bledsoe. Bledsoe. He doesn't talk about any of this.
No. Right. And it would give them false prophecies. And then he kind of, and this is what he goes back to the folklore, right back into, okay, well, what is the white lady? It's just an archetype. And the crazy thing is we have a lot of succubi cases of the white lady.
Mm-hmm.
And what Jim Simivan did was kind of, I don't know if, he didn't say this, but it was almost like, yeah, I know people like Nathaniel Gillis talk about it, and it doesn't matter. But I'm going to put a stamp of my approval on this, right? Like, hey, there is a there, and you're not paying attention to the phenomenology. It's not the Virgin Mary. It's literally that archetype that we've seen in folklore. And it's like, oh my gosh, and people aren't paying attention to that because it's not being promoted. We have major streaming services that will go out there and push that narrative. Meanwhile, Simivan's like, yeah, we've experienced her, but it's not quite the Virgin Mary if she's homoerotic. We can't have them both, guys.
Yeah, and well, now aren't they claiming it's Ishtar or Astarte, one of the goddesses of either Egypt or the what would it be, the consort of Yahweh? I guess it would have been back in like the Hebrew. And but the weird thing is, who's the other guy who did communion? Because he saw. I think Ishtar, right? That was the name. That was the entities he thought he encountered, which is a white lady, basically. Mm-hmm. So they're the same thing.
Same thing. Now, what's interesting to note is how Mother Mary and the Virgin Mary and the Holy Spirit are now being equated. It's called syncretism with other gods and goddesses, to where the phenomenon's like, well, I'm pretty sure you're going to ignore history, right? Look at this amazing miracle. Don't look at the message here. I mean, okay, even in 1954, the Aetherius Society, founded by George King, he was a taxi driver that encountered Master Aetherius from Venus and Master Jesus. Here we go. Who was also from Venus? They claim to be a part of a great white brotherhood of enlightened masters overseeing Earth's spiritual evolution, where Jesus, as an alien, sent to guide humanity. What? Where again, it's like, okay, Mother Mary, sure, until you actually get to what she's doing, and then you really see what's going on here. It's like, yeah, forget about history. This is why when individuals are abducted by Jesus, he's the Swedish Presbyterian. He's not that first century olive-skinned Jewish rabbi. It's just literally whatever mock-up they could create. Well, of course I'm that guy.
That's the image they know from pictures they've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I've been on one tonight, so we went through a lot. Oh my God.
We did. I'm trying to think if there's, before we get out of here, if there's anything else I wanted to ask you. Is there anything else? What right now is your biggest, your next move? I know you said you're going to South America, right, for a conference soon?
I should be. I don't know what our government's doing with that. I don't want to get there and,
How's Parasymposia coming along?
It's going good. It's so all of the NHI discussions with Steve Mayer and I are going to be on there.
Awesome. Those are great, by the way. I enjoy
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're seeing a lot of movement with that, a lot of interest regarding that. And then it's going to be, we're going to link. I can't upload because it's not my content. But we're going to link all of my interviews there for people to watch. And that's like over
And
200.
if you need anything from me too, from the
Yeah.
two we did, I could send you the original files even if you want them, brother.
I'd appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
So far, what I want to do is give back to everybody to where I could just link it. So, it's good to be on this podcast, and, here it is. That way people can actually go and subscribe to the channel. Yeah. That'd be pretty cool too. So that's going to be up there. The whole goal here, though, is like I've done hundreds and hundreds of these things. And after a while, people are like, I just want to go to one site. I don't want to, have to follow you around everywhere. So that's what it's going to be. And then I'll be putting out content once a week, and then do like a weekly Q&A, which is really cool, man. I'm excited about it. It's going to be a major endeavor, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Well, I think this topic is just going to, I think, blow up over the next few years, because it's the timing for it is now. That's the card that's going to be played, whether it's something legitimate or a psychological operation. And we have to sift through a lot of it, and we're probably going to have to sift through a lot of it. I mean, obviously we live in a supernatural reality, because this place isn't normal, and getting to the bottom of who the hell is manipulating us, I think, is a really important thing. And I think you bring a lot to the whole entire field, because no one clarifies things the way you do. And they also don't come on podcasts like mine. I have a channel who I talk to some of my friends on.
I love it.
And you come on, like, it's like, who else does that? Like, no one does that, especially people who have a following like you. So I appreciate you, brother. You're doing an awesome job. Man. I definitely want to have another conversation with you soon about all this. So let's definitely
we will
get back together soon. And if there's any other links that I missed, I know I have everything in the description. But all right, brother. It was great talking to you.
Thanks.
I don't think anyone in the chat has any. Yeah, everyone's just talking with each other. So awesome. All right, brother. Let's definitely talk soon.
Joe. All right, brother.
Later, man.